With me now, David Barton, Rabbi Daniel Lappin, Reverend James Robison, and Dave Reaver. Before we get to all this happy talk about how everything great and hopeful it is, would you all agree with me that we are facing powerful evil that we haven't seen in the world, you think, ever?
Not in our generation.
Yeah, not in our generation. I mean, when, you know, back in the 30s, I think people fought it and saw it, but it's
worse than 1980 when we finally recognized together that we had a very serious threat to freedom. And we recognized an enemy on the outside. And it brought us together a little bit like the day after 9/11 when we came together. But we really came to our senses. Right now we have an enemy that's committed to destroying everything we believe.
freedom on the entire planet.
Yeah. But we have an enemy within.
Yeah.
We have forsaken the founding principles. We have forsaken the truth. The enemy is within. We take lightly the truth. We take lightly the Judeo-Christian principles upon which our nation was built.
How do you
see? We've always had enemies without before, but we had a common set of core values that we relied on. But now we got all the progressive nonsense, in addition to all the Islamic extremism, and we got to fight inside and outside. We've never had to do that before.
Well, here's perhaps just a start of the hope and the good news, which is that yes, we are facing fierce fanatics and frenzied fiends bent on our destruction.
I think we're facing more. I think we are actually facing, I feel it, a force of evil. There's something to good. Who is it? Was anybody at 828 down in Washington? Yeah. You felt that good, didn't you? Oh, yeah. You felt that good. Oh, yeah. So there is something. When you gather people, it compounds on itself.
Isaiah said your countenance testifies against you. You can look at the countenance of people who are walking with their fist in the face of God. And by the way, His grace allows you to live with your fist in His face, but you're going to pay the consequences for those terrible, terrible decisions. And so this is what we see right now, and that is an open rebellion against truth and against the Word and the will of God. And it is going to lead to catastrophic.
It can feel hopeless sometimes. The task seems immense. And I think part of the hope is that as ancient Jewish wisdom teaches, when it came time for Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, amazingly enough, only 20% of the Jews followed him out. Wow. 20%, that's ancient Jewish wisdom. It's reliable.
I love it.
That means the entire basis of civilization in the world that came down from God to Moses on Mount Sinai came to only 20%. Who were willing to step forward, willing to say, I don't mind feeling like a rhinoceros in a petting zoo. I'm willing to stand out and be different.
About the same number?
The American Revolution, just about 25%. Only about 25% of Americans supported the Patriot cause. You had about 25% who were on the other side, and about 50% who were just ambivalent and see which way it falls. So it was, again, a minority. 20%.
A small number of us can
and
make
25%.
All the difference.
That's exactly
but
right.
we have to be committed.
Yes.
25%.
Let me address the conspiracy. You talk about conspiracy a lot. The great conspiracy you refer to in one of your
I read about
books,
it in the New York Times.
In one of your books that I hope everybody's read, Overton and Wendy, you have one of your key spokespersons talking about the real power is the principalities and powers in the heavenly realm. That is the real conspiracy. That is the powers of deception. Now, we're going to have to bring a kingdom of light to bear on that, a kingdom of truth. And that means people are going to have to stand up. We can no longer sit under that covering and hide that light anymore. Now is the time for us to come together, Glenn, and here's the key. And I'm going to say this very emphatically to everyone. Listen, you might have to borrow your camera here for a moment. The only hope America has is for people who truly understand the absolute importance of faith, of family, of freedom, which in my opinion includes a healthy free market that is not greed-driven, greed-controlled, greed-vulnerable, because it works. It's going to include that group coming together who really value it. That's why we can appreciate, and by the way, it's only in this country that Islamic people who are not radical extremists want to do it, everybody even have the right to worship freely, because they are destroyed by their own overseas in the Middle East. And it's here that we have the greatest freedom. So we're talking about faith, but it is the Judeo-Christian principle. That was the rock-solid foundation that was so solid and unshakable, and atheists signed off on it, and 2 deists signed off on it, and they stood on solid ground. And we've been building on that foundation. We have forsaken it. If we don't return to that foundation, I really believe we're in more trouble than we can describe.
Can I quote Ronald Reagan? I wrote this down, and I think it'd be appropriate right now. This is Reagan's statement: freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. This is going back to our original beliefs, finding what we were built on that let us outlast any other democracy in all the human race. No government has lasted as long as we have. And as a result, we go back to where we started. We can continue in the future. And one other thing, too, you guys can do this better than me, but there's some statement somewhere that I've heard over and over that about 20% of the church pays for 80% of the church who don't pay to come, and 80% of the church are there. I hate to use the language that went with that statement, but they're feeding off the. You only have two of them as a man and a woman, and they're feeding off of them, and everybody else is paying for their. You know what I'm saying when I go back to this? I hope that didn't confuse you, but when I go back to this, I'm saying it's that percentage that don't cave. It's the percentage that are sitting in the studio that are involved enough to show up at a Beck event here. It's these kind of people and people around the world in the churches that of that 20, 25%, that's what's going to make the difference.
Right.
And I'm in the most powerful minority on the face of the earth. And I tell you, if someone said it was called a silent majority, well, I'm not silent. I can tell you right now, I will speak until there's not a word left to speak. I want to slide through the gates of pearl with my hair on fire and blisters on my feet because I went through hell to get there. I want 10 people to have to replace me. I do not want to sit around and do nothing while this country is struggling. And there's people just like us at this table.
I know.
And I'm proud of my black robe thing, man, whatever you call that. I forgot what it was.
Back in just a second. With me now, David Barton, the one and only. Oh, he makes people angry. Then we have Rabbi Daniel Lappin. Oh, he makes them go crazy.
Makes them think.
Then we have James Robison, he has written this book, Living in Love. His wife, Betty, is here in the audience, and I wanted to point her out because they're celebrating 48 years
this week.
Wow.
Being married.
Yeah. And by the way, the fact that we would be here with God-given concern for the nation and the future and the importance of us coming together with a heart harmony and a holiness that returns us to sanity is us getting out from under taking care of our business while somebody else gives us the business and beginning to make a difference in this nation. And that's what all the good family people and the people who have been trying to do right are going to have to come out now and be the difference makers because a difference has been made in their life. They've got to do it. Quit just sitting around.
I have a feeling they will. Dave Reaver is also here. This is Dave's book called Scarred. Dave has one of the most amazing, uplifting stories you will ever hear. These two books. Get them now. Dave, where do you get yours?
Online at Reaver Foundation. That's R-O-E-V-E-R, foundation.org.
Okay. Now, I said a few minutes ago, name the 10 Commandments. So, you, Jack, there in the second row here, looking up with the sweater like, what?
Boy, I have a feeling that I'm going to be able to name a few, that's for sure, maybe not all of them. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not bear false witness against another. I think I've reached my limit at the moment.
4.
He's got 4.
That's above average.
Okay. Who would like to take it from there? Yes, in the back.
You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make unto yourselves graven images.
Got that one down.
Keep the Sabbath holy. Honor your mother and father. Do not commit adultery. Do not murder. Do not steal. Do not lie.
Okay, show off.
Now, can I throw something in on this?
Yes.
Because I've been involved in a bunch of cases, the U.S. Supreme Court, on those 10 things. It's interesting, the U.S. Supreme Court tells us that we can't post the 10 Commandments because they say there's 5 versions of the 10 Commandments. The great theologians in the court apparently know the 5 versions. They say there's a Jewish version, there's a Christian version, there's a Protestant version, there's an Orthodox version, and there's a Lutheran version. And therefore you can't have a display because it might be one preferred over. They're all in the same paragraph. It's just the numbers that differ. So what happened is, I mean, you know, on most of the monuments we've had to defend in court, the prologue says, "I am the Lord thy God." That's a Christian version, because that's a Protestant version, right? Because it says, but in the Jewish version, that's the first command. It's all their content. The numbers differ, and I really like the way the Jews do it, because if you don't get that first one right, that he's God, then why shouldn't you kill someone? Why shouldn't you steal? It has to start with the recognition of God.
So would you all agree that the first thing we have to do if we want to fix our country is just, because I've said this on the air for years, man, if we would just do the top 10, if we would just get those 10 down, you know, it's like simple stuff. It's like the Lord is like, still at number 10, still waiting for number 10. You know, and if we could just get those top 10, we would change the country.
I mean, everyone would agree, I think, that this invisible web of Judeo-Christian morality rooted in the Big Ten still protects the nicer parts of our country to this day.
Okay, I'm going to share one more thing. When we come back, I want to share one more thing. This is a book by Rabbi Daniel and Susan Lappin. It's fantastic. I've learned so much from it. I want to share something that he shared with all of us at dinner last night that I'd like you to consider doing with your family. Back in a minute. With David Barton, Rabbi Daniel Lappin, Reverend James Robison, and Dave Reaver. We were talking in the break, before I get to the rabbi, talking in the break, I don't know if you've ever heard why the court says we can't have the 10 Commandments posted in school. Listen to this.
Stone v. Graham, 1980, the U.S. Supreme Court said, if the posted copies of the 10 Commandments were to have any effect at all, it might be to induce the school children to read them. And if they were to read them, they might meditate on them. And if they were to meditate on them, they might respect and obey them, and that would be unconstitutional. Don't kill, don't steal, all those terrible things, that, all the things that hang in courts of law all over the country.
So in other words, it's okay to do the things, you just mustn't think about them. That's right. So
exactly
right.
All right. Exactly. So last night, I was having dinner, and was it you, David, that pointed out that we should have a prayer after the meal?
Yes.
I love this. This is the best. Explain, Rabbi.
Well, Glenn, first of all, thanks to you and your wife for so graciously arranging kosher food for Susan and me. I really appreciate that.
Not a problem. By the way, kosher food.
Don't do that again.
I mean, it's delicious. Every bite of it is delicious.
I sat on this for a while.
But at any rate, the actual writing in the Torah says, and you shall eat, and you shall be satisfied, and you shall bless the Lord your God for the food. And so it leaves us to deduce the need to say a grace before the meal, but the Torah emphasizes the need to say the grace after meals. And the reason is that it's not hard to induce really hungry people to pray.
Oh, I see your point.
But when we're feeling good and full and satisfied with good food and good company, as we were last night, it takes another thing to think about, wait a second, now's a good time to acknowledge the boss and say thank you.
And that's what George Washington did. He prayed twice. He prayed before the meal and after the meal. Exactly.
That's right, exactly.
George Washington.
And this
Did his wife?
No, he was a deist. I forgot. What was I thinking?
And the Jewish prayer, the grace after meals, essentially thanks God for an economic system that makes us all interdependent with one another, just as Reverend Robison and I have been talking about. When we're made interdependent with one another, we're actually all able to eat. And that's crucial.
Doctor, how do we heal the divisions between us and take a cattle prod to the seat of the people in the pulpit?
Well, I've said to you personally, and I'll say it again, I don't mind you getting all fired up, riled up. There's plenty to get stirred up about. But your greatest strength is going to be the love that flows through you like a river. It's clear. And it is this love that is going to tear down the walls of division. You're seeing it right here in this room. And I wouldn't be able to find out anyone out in this room that I wouldn't love. I might not agree with you, and I will never waver. I will never compromise. I'm going to stand firm. But I believe we have compromised the greatest power on the planet, and that's the power of love. By dividing up and building walls, where we don't let the love of Jesus penetrate those barriers. We have to let that happen.
You know, what's really interesting is he stood with Dr. Martin Luther King, and when he said that, I remembered that is exactly what Martin Luther King used to say. And look at the change he made in the world. Back in a minute. when we return to a people of, as George Washington said, of merit, things will change. When we unite, we'll fix and heal ourselves and our country and lead the world again.